By this point, most people have realised that gaming is in a more miserable state than usual. Companies are reporting that games are not selling enough and they're not making sufficient profits in line with the money invested. This has led to a direction being taken that most consumers don't want: a push towards more service games and microtransactions. Due to all of this, the Sony PlayStation State of Play ended up being utterly dreadful, as it would heavily emphasise lots of games that loyal long-term customers would have zero interest in at all. This means that there is extremely negative discourse about it online because of the people who actually cared enough about it in the first place to actually even watch. They've walked away very, very disappointed. Traditionally, it's always been around this time of year that E3 would normally take place. Normally everyone would be really excited because you'd have tons of cool new things being announced, and then you'd end up having lots of things to look forward to over the next year or so. But no E3 this year, sorry everyone, not allowed it. Instead, we have a lovely little state of play which showed us a very bleak looking future for gaming, quite frankly. And then very, very little in the way of exciting games, and they wasted an entire third of their whole presentation just on Concord, which is just a zoomer shooter that no one wants, that's going to be full of microtransactions. And do you know what? I've not seen a single person who is actually excited for Concord at all. Do you know what? In fact, I actually went onto the PlayStation YouTube channel and looked at their video for Concord, right? So at the time of writing this video, it sat there with 3,839 likes, okay? But if you run it through one of those websites where you can see the dislikes, it had a whopping 21,480 dislikes. That's 85% dislikes. Like, how can PlayStation have those statistics right there in their YouTube Studio app and not think, oh, I think we fucked up? Like, honestly, Jesus Christ, you've got evidence right there in front of your very eyes, PlayStation. Take a look at that and perhaps rethink your strategy. It's situations like this where you realise that really YouTube had to remove the dislike button because corporations do not like having the amount of dislikes on their videos visible, because they do not like that consumers can have that kind of level of power. Like for PlayStation, they've decided that they want to go in a particular direction, and be damned all of those who don't like it. It's like, how dare you, general consumer, who we rely on financially, how dare you not like the products that we are putting out, and how dare you not want them? Goodness gracious. So you're going to look at that video and think, oh, well, it's got just over 3,000 likes, but you're never ever going to see the huge level in which the dislike button has been clicked. I mean, it's crazy, really. It's also crazy the fact that they think that you can't just run the URL through another website to just check it anyway. But still, how many people are even going to think to do that in the first place? I don't understand at all. Sorry, I just don't understand what PlayStation are thinking with Concord at all. It's shambolic at this point. Like that whole state of play announcement. Shambolic, really. Obviously, I understand that corporations want to control the narrative and they want to control how they want people to view their products. But at the end of the day, it's mental to me that that was the game that Sony's put the most hype into, and it's gone down like a lead balloon. Concord contains nearly all of the elements that people are telling PlayStation that they do not want in games. And this isn't just PlayStation, this is Xbox and Nintendo too. It's a service game. It's going to be full of microtransactions. The visible diversity of the cast makes it have this, you know, pretentious air of moral superiority. It looks extremely cliche 2024. So much so that I think it almost looks like a parody of itself. It also feels like the most corporate game ever. Like, there's nothing fun and fresh and raw and organic about it at all. It's everything that no one wants. It's almost like to a point that it feels creatively bankrupt. It beggars belief. So anyway, with all of that context given, and bearing in mind it's technically E3 month without the E3, we do have the Xbox presentation coming up shortly in the next few days. That's either going to make gaming look 10 times more depressing, or it could be an unexpected saviour, countering PlayStation's hubris. So this is the month that usually people would be asking who's going to win E3. There are some things that I think that Xbox could be doing to win consumers' favour back. First and foremost, I would say to them, don't repeat the mistakes of PlayStation, because PlayStation have come off the back of their presentation looking disconnected from their audience, looking complacent, they're looking overly corporate and money grabbing, and they had an overemphasis on service games. So to counter this, Xbox should not try to shove service games down our throats. I understand companies need to make money and that service games do have a place in gaming, but despite the fact that there is a market for them, this kind of game should not be taking up an entire third of a presentation. When you have a presentation which is supposed to be catering to as wide an audience as possible, zeroing in on such a small sector is not going to be helping anyone. It's not going to help your audience, and it's not going to help yourselves. Therefore, I think it would be more prudent for Xbox to open their presentation with something a little bit less bloody divisive. You know, like a decent new game, a brand new exciting feature, or even a new piece of hardware. I think that's something that needs to be considered by these people who put these presentations together, is that they're almost in a way like wrestling cards. Like, you have to be careful with your placement of matches and the pacing of the show. And I really feel like PlayStation had massively messed that up. It's so important how Xbox opened their presentation, because PlayStation really failed. So yes, if they manage to intrigue people rather than instantly piss them off, that's probably going to be a much better start. Do you remember when the marketing for the PlayStation 4 was all about, this is for the players? Now, Sony's like the dead opposite of that. And I feel like this is a really good opportunity for Xbox to swoop in and become the game console for players. The ball is in their court to be able to do that due to Sony's own goals, as it were. Speaking of stuff for the players, Sony has massively missed the mark when not resonating with the general consumer feeling at the moment that times are tougher, and thus thinking more about their financial decisions. Yeah, there was no emphasis on this at all. There was no indication at all that Sony was even considering how to make gaming feel like good value for money for their customer bases, and that Sony products are a more cost-effective option. Most people at the moment are looking for bargains, because at the moment it feels particularly good to get a bargain. Nothing that PlayStation have presented felt like a better option than what's already available on the market. I mean, for goodness bloody sake. They were trying to convince us that it's a good idea to purchase PS5 versions of PS4 games when those PS4 games can be played on a PlayStation 5. Like, for God's sake, PlayStation. What the hell are you thinking with that? Like, they're actually coming across as stupid with stuff like that. It's like, Until Dawn was one of their really poorly thought out reveals in that state of play. Like, for God's sake. What it is that they're making gaming feel frivolous at the moment, and the general consumer cannot be frivolous like they were able to be in the past. Like, read the room, Sony. So therefore, one of the ways that Xbox could this year win E3 would be to show that they are a better value for money option than PlayStation 5, and there are several ways in which they can do this. Firstly, announcing that they have more and more backwards compatibility for games made for previous hardware would go down really, really well. And Xbox is already much better than PlayStation at doing this, but I really do feel like they need to make a bigger thing of this. They should be screaming from the rooftops. that this is something that they do, because they are then opening up so much more in the way of options to all of their customer base. Secondly, I'd say Game Pass. Now, Game Pass, they already have like a really, really huge emphasis on this. I get that. They could be doing so much more with it, showcasing to people why Game Pass is such a consumer-friendly product. Just to recap a little bit, but also be a bit more clear on what I'm saying. With these two strategies, they would have essentially the whole player base covered. They'd be able to keep so many more people happy by doing that. Because with the backwards compatibility, they would keep people like me really, really satisfied. People like me who have perhaps a collection of games that they've kept from the previous generations of Xbox hardware. And then we'd be able to keep going back and playing those games and enjoying them and keep using our Xboxes. But then also people who aren't necessarily that into buying physical. For those people, they'd be satisfied too, because they might not necessarily feel like rushing out to buy the latest $70 game when they can just log into Game Pass and have access to the brand new first party titles immediately at launch anyway. Like, that sort of consumer friendly action is really, really needed in the current environment. Something else that I think Xbox could do, which would really drum up excitement, would be to give us an actual surprise. I mean, it doesn't have to be like an important surprise, just something that's exciting and good that gets people talking. I do have an example of this, but it's not quite related to gaming, but I still feel like it fits the situation. In Stephen Bartlett's book, Diary of a CEO, he outlines that his friends and himself all ended up signing up to a particular gym. And the reason that they chose that gym over other ones was because it had something that none of the other gyms had. They hadn't seen it before in a proper gym where you go to just exercise and nothing else. And that was a climbing wall. The fact that there was a climbing wall right in the centre of this gym, no one used it ever, because really, a climbing wall being in the middle of a gym is absolutely ludicrous. But they got to say to other people when they talked about their gym, oh, my gym has a climbing wall. So really the idea of having a climbing wall inside of a gym is actually really quite ludicrous, but it made the gym memorable. That's what's important. It made it memorable. So when Stephen Bartlett himself had opened up an office space, he spent tens of thousands of pounds installing a slide and a ball pit. Now, none of his office workers actually particularly used those things ever. But the fact is, it was novel and it was interesting and it was memorable. And it actually ended up creating a bit of a media buzz. And he had all of these national newspapers contacting him and wanting to get pictures of him sliding down this slide. Things like that, which are funny and exciting, whether they're important or not, they will make people remember you. And that is what's important. That's what Xbox needs to do. If they do something like that for us, they're instantly going to get over much better than PlayStation have. This is definitely something that works really well in gaming as well. Nintendo are actually the kings of this. Like, mostly it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Mostly it works. Like, let's take a look at the 3D screen on the Nintendo 3DS. Like, who really ever used the 3D settings, like, for more than, like, one or two games? And who kept it turned on all the time? I'm betting you probably didn't, but it was a silly, fun gimmick. It worked. It just worked. Like, look how well the 3DS sold. It sold phenomenally well. So, Xbox, if you're listening, which you're not, you're not listening, but you need to do something like this. It doesn't need to be anything as profound as a climbing wall or a slide of a ball pit or 3D capabilities. It just needs to be something that's fun, impractical, and generate some buzz and excitement and people talking. That's all. Just think of something. You will get a lot more positive benefits from that than you would without. Obviously, exclusive games would be very useful too. I know that exclusive games aren't necessarily like the most consumer friendly product out there, but it does give people reason to purchase one console over another. I was sitting there thinking, what would be the most preposterous exclusives that could be announced that would generate a huge amount of hype for Xbox? None of the following ones that I'm going to say, I can't see them ever being announced, but they would definitely go on to like win E3. And those would be Minecraft 2, Banjo 3E, and a sequel to Skyrim. Those were those are my 3 best ideas. Give me some help here in the comments if you can think of like an Xbox exclusive that would generate like a massive amount of hype, because I think at some point we're going to have to help these idiots out. Hey, look, and I'm just going to throw it out there, but a dockable handheld Xbox purpose-built for Game Pass on the go would go down a treat. I would want that. Moving on, I am noticing more and more of a political divide in gaming. I feel that one of the reasons that State of Play has been received so very badly is partially politically motivated, because you can see this in every single comment section, whether it's be in the comments under one of PlayStation's own videos, or whether it's in the comment section of someone commenting on it, as in made a video about it. There are a lot of people out there, whether you agree with them or not, who believe that diversity, equity and inclusion are being shoved down their throats at the expense of good games and storytelling. Therefore, if Xbox can demonstrate that they are hearing gamers and are prepared to put game quality over political messaging, that would go down very, very well. Basically, all I'm saying is that there is a reason that Stellar Blade had got as much traction as it did, and that's because it didn't look cookie cutter and box ticky like the vast majority of AAA titles at the moment. As I said when I was covering the PlayStation State of Play, one of the reasons that Astrobot ended up being received so very well was because it was completely apolitical. What I'm saying is that an emphasis on gameplay, of graphics and different styles is going to go down a whole lot better with gamers than a diversity of human characteristics. Look, and I'm not saying to get rid of DEI entirely. What I'm saying is just dial it back so that it feels reasonable and more realistic and not like a corporate tick box exercise. It's just that it's gotten to a point now that it's become immersion breaking. That's because there is so much emphasis on it now. And I'm saying this as a mixed race woman. Moving on again, I think that one of the biggest problems with State of Play is that Astrobot, which indeed does look amazing, looks way better than it should have been. Number one, because they place it as essentially the main event at the end of the presentation, but also because everything that had come before it had been so deeply, deeply disappointing. Therefore, the main event for Xbox should be one of two things. Either A nostalgia-driven new release that will make people feel nostalgic and warm and fuzzy, or B, the complete opposite. So a brand new, stylish, cool game to really hype up that isn't a walking cliche of 2024 and not everything that everyone hates about what PlayStation have presented to us. Do I really think that any of these things are going to happen? No, I do not. In all honesty, I think that it's going to be another show. I have to be honest, I do. It's just the way things are at the moment. I think it's going to be filled with all of the same bollocks that State of Play was. I think it's all because it's another American-based brand positioning themselves in 2024, and they're just completely out of touch. I think they're going to announce a load of games with all of the same bullshit that pissed us off with State of Play, like service games, zoomer shooters, predatory microtransactions, bullshit, expensive skins, more pandaverse bollocks and nonsense that further alienate their core demographic. So tell me, do you like the ideas that I put forward for Xbox's presentation? And do you think that my prophecy that it's going to be another show just like State of Play was a little bit harsh? And there is something else that I will mention as well. I actually have a way that we can actually bypass the crazy prices of brand new games. So if you want to have up to 90% off of a brand new game, then please feel free to click on my Instant Gaming affiliate link in the description and the pinned comment, because they have got thousands and thousands and thousands of brand new games at heavily discounted prices. So you'll be able to shop to your heart's content without feeling ripped off by corporate leeches sucking every last bit of money that they can out of you. If you particularly like what I do and want to support me in a more personal way, then please consider backing me over on Patreon. Thank you very much for sticking around to this point in the video, and I'll see you in the next one.